Welcome back to Working Hands Making Stuff. Today's project is backsplash tile in my kitchen. My wife picked this 3" by 6" travertine tile with a beveled edge. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to see the bevel in this light. It's kind of hard to see with the lighting, but let me see if I can turn off one light here and see if it shows any better. There it is. So it's a natural stone tile with a bevel edge. It's 3 by 6. It's going to be set up as a railroad tile. And before we start, we have some prep work. I have 8 outlets that I need to take out, and I have some box extenders that need to go in behind the outlets so that everything sits on top of the tile and flush and doesn't look like an idiot put it together, really. Additionally, this piece of wood that's sitting here is going to be used as a straight edge along the side of the counter to make sure that I start perfectly straight. Now, because I am doing this in a subway tile and we're going 4 rows up, 2 tiles need to be cut in half because we're going to start with half tiles. So, and for those of you who have a brad nailer similar to that, it's a godsend. Now here's the table saw I'm using. This is a Harbor Freight tile saw. It's a 7" model, and instead of using a pump with water, it basically has a tray of water underneath the saw blade, which the blade drags in and drags water up with it. Now, there's the blade, how it just hangs in there behind the guard. So let's plug it in and show you just how it drags this water up. This is going to be a wet, messy process. It's literally that's spraying all over my shirt as I do that. So, since each of these tiles are twice the width of their height, I'm actually going to use a tile, the width of a tile, to measure the half height. I'm sorry, the height of a tile to measure the half width that I'm going to need for those 2 half cuts, and put that fence in. That fence is terrible, by the way. It's a terrible fence, but it was a $40 saw, so there's nothing really, I can say about that. All right, now we're going to put these box extenders in. As I explained before, this is so that the outlets sit on top of the tile and not underneath the tile. I've seen amateurs, home gamers put in these outlets back at the same level of the wall that they were, instead of above the tile, when they put up backsplash or anything else, and it just looks terrible. So now that we have this outlet open, we're going to check it to make sure that it's not live. And it's live. That black wire you can see is definitely live. Now this is held in with wire nuts. This is the only outlet like this in the kitchen because it's got a couple of USB ports, so it's not just a standard outlet. But now that I've killed the circuit, you'll see there's no power left on there. So let's disconnect this and pull this outlet out. Pull those wire nuts. Alright, now we're going to test fit this box. Now, as you can see, it doesn't seem to fit right, and it's because the people who mudded this house, who put in the sheetrock when the house was built, just didn't seem to care what they were doing, so they just dumped a bunch of mud literally right into the outlets and any openings that there were. It's just kind of what happens. So now we're going to mix our mortar. Make sure you have goggles on and a respirator or just a dust mask, really. You just don't want to breathe this stuff in. It's a fine dust when you start mixing and gets up in your lungs. You want to add water slowly. It takes a lot less water than you think it's going to need. And as you mix it, add a little more water. Go slow. Don't add a ton of water. Don't mix more than you're going to need at any given time, because once it dries, it's basically a rock. You can't do anything with it. So it needs a little bit more there. And you'll see it's going to be like a thick, smooth peanut butter consistency, not a thin peanut butter, but a nice thick consistency. And there we go. I'm trying to get it all off of the paddle there. And there it is. You can see it holds pretty well. It's pretty pasty like. And this is the trowel we're going to use. It's a 3/16 by 5/32 trowel. Now, what you're going to see me do here, you see I have the tiles lined up there, all set up. And we have little spacers. Now I just want to show you these spacers that I bought here. These spacers, I thought they were going to be great. Everything was going to work. But one, because of the bevel there, we really can't get into the gap there to actually help us keep things separated. The other thing is these are set up as subway tiles, and these crosses are really more useful for laying square tiles on floor. So I got these other literally cheaper ones that we can just sit in there as crosses on their ends and keep our spacing and our gaps correctly. But again, if we were to use it the way they're intended to be used for when all your grout lines line up in every direction. So what you're going to see me do here now is you're going to see me apply the mortar directly to the wall. Now, I thought this was going to be a good idea. This is actually a terrible idea because of the size of the space that I'm working in. The problem with doing it this way is that it's just tight spaces, tight clearances. You can't really move that tool around too well in there. I couldn't find a smaller paddle there. So I'm applying and I'm going about it. And once I finish this wall, you'll see I actually switch up my method. But getting the tiles up on the wall, really, this is a super easy project. This is something anybody can do, with a normal sized kitchen in a weekend, really. This actually took me longer than a weekend, not because I didn't have the skill set, but more because I didn't have the time. Once I finished this actual wall that you're going to see here, I actually had to leave because we had a dinner date, and I had to continue the other side the next day. And because you really want that mortar to dry for 24 hours before you apply the grout, it wound up taking me 2 weekends. But again, if you just start in the morning, work your way through, you'll be grouting the next day. This is, total number of hours, I'd say I probably spent, including grout, 10 to 12 hours on this whole project. Not a long amount of time. And the hardest part of this whole project, honestly, is the cutting the tiles, the small pieces to fit. That whole section under the sink, under the window, above the sink, That whole section probably took the longest time of the entire kitchen, really. The number of times I had to measure and remeasure each of those pieces so that I was the right thickness, I had the right gapping, everything had to be perfect because if you knew my wife, you would know why everything had to be perfect. Now, you'll see at this point, I've gone from applying mortar directly to the wall, and I'm now applying it to the back of the tiles. And that's it. Once you get past the cuts, it's super easy. You're just going one after the other. Put a spacer in, make sure your gaps are right, do the next one. Put a spacer in, make sure your gaps are right, do the next one. Until you hit outlets or boxes. And that's where you're going to wind up falling down or tripping because that's where all the work is on this whole project. Now, you're going to see me go completely over one hole in the wall. And this was intentional. It's the house, this house was built 4 years ago. It's a relatively new house. But the builder, in his or her or the corporate mentality, infinite wisdom, they ran the house for actual landline phones. I haven't had a landline phone in I don't know how long. And while there are still other outlets for landline phones in the house, I found that the location for a landline phone directly underneath that cabinet is probably the worst place to put a house phone. So I decided I was just going to cover it over. And if somebody in the future decides they actually want a landline phone in the house, they can just run it off of one of the other lines or whatever. But it's just a ridiculous place for it. In the corner, in the kitchen, underneath some cabinets, and what am I going to do with that? Just mount the phone underneath there? There's no way. It's ridiculous. So this is the whole process: measure, cut, fit, mortar, and and that's it. I mean, this wall's almost done, and this is the hard wall. You'll see once I get to the other. Well, you won't actually see once I get to the other wall because the video cuts out. The camera battery died, or I don't know what happened. It stopped recording just as I had started, but it's much more flat wall, much fewer outlets, and I burned through that wall in an hour or two. Like I said, waiting for the mortar to dry before grouting was probably the hardest part of that whole day. Now that was my wife. She came to check on my progress and to remind me we had plans to go out for dinner, and I needed to jump into a shower and get dressed and get ready. In the next half hour or 45 minutes at that point, I don't even remember. So she already had her hair done and her makeup done. She just needed to get dressed, or whatever that means for women. So here she is, making sure everything is straight and exactly the way she likes it. She's very particular. And this is about it. This is just, you can see that wet spot right down the front of my shirt. That's all from the tile saw. The white spots that are down the middle of my shirt, that's all stone dust. That's all travertine stone dust that's been thrown up with the water at me. But for 40 bucks, I think the blade cost me almost as much as that wet saw did. And for what it is, for what I needed it for, it's great. If I was doing tile every single day of my life, or even once a month for my entire life, I'd hate that saw. I'd hate that saw in one weekend because setting that fence is just such a pain in the neck. And it's not a professional grade tool. And that's what Harbor Freight is. For those of you who are not aware, it's tools for the home gamer. They're not professional grade tools. They're made if you need to do something and you're gonna use it a handful of times. Here's the inspector, making sure everything's good. But if you're gonna use it a handful of times, go out, get the tool, use it. They work great. If, on the other hand, you need to make your living with it, do not spend the money. So here's the other side. You can see I've already put up my my boards for my straight edges. That one right there in the front, that's where the stove goes. As you can see, my sister-in-law did a wonderful job helping us paint behind the stove. I was going to pull the stove out when we were painting. She's like, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. She just stuck her brush back there, and I'd had enough painting at that point, so I didn't even care. And I even knew that at some point I'd be back to doing this. A real backsplash, so I left it. So we're going to start in that corner there. Again, we're going to pull the outlets, put the box extenders on. Same process from yesterday. And there we go, just mortar to the back of the tile and line it up. Mortar, line it up. Super easy. And here we come, measuring around boxes. And that was my dog checking things out. And my son is finding those little tile spacers and bringing them over to me one at a time as I'm working. But that's it. That's basically the whole process. And this wall went super quick, like I said. Many more straight runs than the other walls, so maybe it just felt quicker, but the camera cuts out right about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a photo up of what the rest of that wall looks like. And I'm going to have the grouting video out hopefully in the next few hours. My biggest problem is that I just need the time to get the script together and audio dub it. And right now there's nobody in the house, so I'm hoping that I can get that all done and then edit and post to YouTube. But I hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, if you like what I'm doing with this channel, subscribe. I read all the comments. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Hit the thumbs up. Just, you know, support me. Let me know you like what I'm doing, and hopefully I'll bring some content that you guys enjoy. And if you have any ideas or things that you want to see done, put it in the comments. Let me know, and I might get to it. Thank you.